Hello and welcome. In this video, I'm going to tell you about Actuator. Actuator is a plugin for Krita that lets you automate some repetitive actions you can do in the software. So before we go into the details of how the plugin actually works, I want to talk about actions itself. And if you know what the actions is all about, you can just skip over to the section where you can see what the plugin does actually and how it does it. So actions, you can see them as the very atomic, very small little thing you can do. Basically, it's just as the name suggests. For instance, when you create some new layer by pressing this plus button, under the hood, the Krita actually activates one action, which is basically create a new paint layer. When you delete the layer, you also trigger the action that actually tells that to delete the layer. So, and most of the things in Krita are actually, they are action driven, let's say. And for instance, in this particular application, there are almost more than 500 actions. And so basically, while you're doing things on the editor, you can do a lot of stuff that are really repetitive. Instead of just clicking buttons to do the same stuff over and over, what you can do is basically you can chain these actions together and get the things basically done faster. And what the Actuator actually does is it gives you a small sort of editor that lets you basically create the sequences that you can use to do some particular stuff. And some of the examples of these sequences are maybe, let's say, when you do the work, it's most of the time when you create the new vector layers, you actually draw some rectangles around, and to create the vector layer, you go to this layers section and you basically click on this little triangle and you choose the vector layer. Then you go to the tools panel, you select the rectangular tool, and then you do the stuff you want to do. So you can so not to spend a lot of time by just going here, clicking, and then going there and clicking here. You can just create some little sequence that will let you do these actions, just sequentially, basically. And you can chain literally anything. So maybe I don't know, for some reason you duplicate the layer, and then you maybe do some a little blurring, and then maybe you invert the colors. So maybe you have some particular sequence when you create some effects. Let's say you want to create some very weird contrast, and you do this a lot. So instead of clicking, you can just make a sequence, and then this sequence can be executed just pressing one button. And speaking of the sequences, this panel on the left, you can see that there are already some sequences already created before. When you first time install the plugin, you will see these two guys here, and the first one of them is just to basically from the visible pixels on the layer, it creates the selection mask. And another one is again from the visible pixels on the layer, it just cut off everything that outside of the selection, basically. So we will see what those actions and rather sequences do very shortly. So let me introduce you basically to the core of the functionality of the plugin itself. So in order to create your own sequences, you go to the Tools, Yep sections, Configure, and you select Configure Actuator. The Configure Actuator window has a few options you can play around. You can trigger the way how the Docker is displayed. You can either have it horizontal or vertical. So when you trigger that, you can now place it like here. So the display option will control whether to show the Docker or not. The icon size is basically controls how large the icon will be, so you can tweak the value, and the panel will resize accordingly. So we'll leave the default just to make the things see better. The reset position is more like a quality of life feature. It's if you resize window or something else going on, sometimes you can have that the Docker will be actually it will have such positions that you cannot grab on this icon and you cannot move it at all. So you can reset position with this button. And so and the basically the core of the things here is the section with the managed sequences, export and import. So let me talk about let's talk from the managed sequences first. So managed sequences are is basically the window that allows you to do everything you need to do with the actions and sequences. So this is sort of like an editor. So the window has three main sections. The first sections is for managing the sequences itself. The second section is for manipulating the current sequence. And the third section is the place where you grab your actions. So let me create one action first, one sequence first to showcase how to use the tool itself. So in order to create the new sequence, you press the new button. Once you press the new button, these two sections are unlocked, and now you can specify your name of the sequence. So let's call it new blurry. Let's say new blurry. You can see that when you set the name, the input box will have this green outline. The green outline means that you can use the name for the sequence. If the name will be not valid, the name of basically the highlight of the input will be in red. If there's names already occupied before, this name also will be invalid. So let me show you. If we take the testing name, you'll see that we already have this sequence, so it will tell us that the name is already taken. For any sequence you create, you can specify the icon, and you can see that at first you will see this exclamation mark icon. So if you not set it anyway the icon, so your sequence will basically have this default icon. And this is something for you just to pay attention or to draw your attention that the icon should be set. So the icon is being set. There are 3 times when the icon is being set. So if you add some action if you not set any icon and you add the action, let's say you add this rotate canvas, and by the way, you can add the action by double clicking on this, on the action name, or by clicking add button. And you probably noticed that when we added the action, the action added to the sequence, and the icon for the sequence changed. So what the plugin does is that if there are any icon associated with the action, it will try and use this icon as a sequence icon. So let's say in our case, we don't want this use the default icon. So what we can do, we can actually refer to the directory, or we can basically choose from the list of the icons that exist in Krita itself and associate the icon with the sequence. So if we click this From Krita button, we will see the entire list of all the options we can choose from. The window also has a little search box, so you can specify the name of the icon, and it will filter out, so you can basically search for the icon. So let's say in our case we want to set something like this. Another way to specify the icon, you actually can use the file itself. So for instance, in this case, the icon for this sequence, icon for this one, and this one are created from file. So you can press the button from file, and it will let you basically can choose the icon which is located in your file system. One thing to keep in mind that once you choose the icon from the file, what the plugin will do, it will actually create the copy of your icon and place it inside the plugin itself. So in other words, you just don't need to worry about this icon anymore, meaning your original icon you were used, you can move it or remove if you don't need it anymore. So basically the icon is stored internally. That's kind of the point here. And let me get back a little bit to recover. So let's say we decided to do like this. So now I already touched it. So in order to add the action to the sequence, we can use this third section of the window, and you can see the entire list of all the actions we have in the application itself. And one note is that the actions are, this list of actions is being built dynamically. So all the actions that are registered in Krita itself, they are available here. So in other words, if you have some plugin that does something very useful for your flow and you want to use it as a part of the sequence together with existing maybe included in Krita actions, you can do that. So for instance, here you can see the list of the actions that are basically from another plugin of my own. So for instance, maybe you create like for instance the mirror copy action, right? So what it does is creates the mirrored copy of the image we have in the layer. So maybe we want to do some little changes to the image and like to the layer, and then create the mirror copy. So you can use this action as well. Another thing on the actions list to note is that if you take a look at what the string has here, so we have some sort of like a title for the action, Let's get back to the let's say for this one. So you have, for instance, mirror copy, right? So you have a title of the action and you have this the name in brackets. So if you use the plugin in the localized version of the application, meaning that your interface is not in English, this list will show you translated version of the titles. However, for some reason in some languages the search wouldn't work. So in order to guarantee that you still can find and filter out the actions, you can use this the name in brackets. So basically the name here is the name for like a title, what the action is, and the name and the string in braces is basically the system name of the action. In other words, if you use the translated version of the Krita, these guys would probably be in your language, but the names here will still be in English. So you can use the search bar to filter out the actions using this, let's say, system names. And for instance, for you, if you kind of remember what the system name for your particular action, you can use that. And as already I touched a little bit on the search. So yeah, so this section also has the little search bar. So this input box is basically a search bar. So if we want something to blur our image, let's say we want to recreate this the sequence is duplicate, blur, and invert colors, right? So we first want to duplicate the layer, right? So we can search the action. So now we can add this action by either double clicking or pressing the add button. And let's say we will add invert, and we have two actions here. So basically invert will invert color and invert selection will invert selection. We're interested in invert color, and also we have a blur, right? So we can have a Gaussian blur and add here. So you probably noticed that the interface has a little triangle buttons. So these triangle buttons are actually for reordering things. You can see that I intentionally added the actions in the wrong order. Is that because you can reorder things around if you see that they needs to be in different order. So we want to duplicate the layer and then we want to blur. So we can select this this action in the sequence and move it up. And why we need to do that is basically the actions in this list are actually determining the order how they will be executed. In other words, first we will execute the duplicate layer, then we will do the Gaussian blur, and then we will invert the colors. So once you press the save button, the action will appear in this list, and you can see that the Docker will disappear and appear again. And when it appears again, it's actually basically it's sort of like a refreshing, so it will have the new action as well. Yeah, so one thing to point out, this window is not blocking the interface, so you can keep it open and create different sequences and play around and experiment how they work. So let's see how does work our new blurry sequence. So let me create some layer first, maybe do some strokes. And now if we click on this button, we can see that it very quickly made a copy which we wanted to have, a duplicated layer. It applied the Gaussian blur and it's did the invert color. Another thing is important to know about the actions and how they are being executed. So if you, again, if you kind of exploring and searching which actions to run, how they run, and what the effect they are have on your image, because as you saw, this list is pretty long. There is a little button with a trigger. So what this trigger does is actually you can right away experiment what the action does. For instance, if I do, let's say, invert, right? I want to know what this invert button does. So if I click trigger, it will trigger this action right away, and you can see what it does. Another thing on the executing the actions itself, you probably noticed that when we did the duplicate layer, then Gaussian blur and invert, at some point one window just blinked and disappeared. And if you do the blur here and trigger this action, the Krita will open the window where you can actually tweak things around and then apply the filter. But when you run the sequence, it actually doesn't let you set the arguments. So when you apply filters, it's probably the default values will be applied. So just for you to keep in mind that when you apply this sort of actions, they will be basically using the defaults probably, or maybe the values that are stored by Krita itself. Now a little note on the editing. So you probably noticed when I clicking the items here, the interface automatically just loads the sequence. So basically when you click on the sequence itself, it's already in the editing mode. So in other words, I can do some changes, save, and it will be applied here. If you want to remove the sequence, you can do that by pressing the remove button, and it will pop up the window just to make sure that you didn't accidentally remove it. You can, basically if you press yes, it will remove it. Another thing on the sequences itself is that the order of the items in this list is actually referred to the order how they will be displayed in this panel. So let's say you decided that you want to have this blurry sequence be like in a third place. You can just move it up, and on the panel it will be in a third place. Another thing on the sort of organization of your sequences, sometimes you might be want to create some sort of like a sections with them. You can create a separator, which is visually will be like a thin line, and to do that you need to basically create a new sequence. You can name it as you please. Let's say separator. And you need to find in the list of actions, you need to find the action which is basically a placeholder action for a separator, and it will have this name. So basically what it is, it's the fake action which does nothing. So if you add this action in your sequence, it will just do nothing. However, on the background, under the hood, when the plugin see the action, like a sequence with the action, the first action as a placeholder, it will create a little thin line right here. So basically you can use this sort of fake sequence as a separator. And you can see that it will appear here. So, and if you click on it, nothing will happen. Another thing, just be kind of aware of, you might see that the separator will have this exclamation mark icon. You can ignore that because, again, under the hood, the icon which will be displayed for this type of sequences will be determined by the type of the sequence. So it doesn't matter what icon you will set here, it will just use, the plugin will use its internal icons. And last thing, probably in terms of the manipulating the sequences itself, is that you can, if you click, let's say here, or you select the sequence, the action in the sequence, and then if you add the action when this one is selected, the basically new actions will be added after the selected item in this list. So if you create something and you decided that you need to insert a new action after motion blur, you can select this motion blur and you can add another action here. And so the last thing to talk about is importing and exporting sequences. So the window here, this configuration window, it has the export sequences and import sequences. So when you click export sequences, you will see the window that just show you all the sequences you have already right now. So you can, let's say for some reason you want to share your sequences with someone, or you want to make a backup of just before updating the software or something like that, you can use this functionality, and then you can decide what kind of sequences you actually want to have. And let's say we want to have only these three guys, and then we click export. So when we export, we just choose the path where we want to save the sequences, and let's say we just call it backup and save. Yeah, a little pop-up will tell you that everything is good. If you don't see this one, probably something went wrong. In this case, just please contact me and we will figure it out. Then now, when you want to import sequences, you just click import. And again, you go to the place where you have your sequence and you just select this one. A little note on the importing. So the idea of importing sequences is very much similar how you when you kind of move files in file system. So first, some files in your file system might be already present, and you kind of want to decide what to do with them. And the same way, the plugin also reacts on what to do with the sequences as well. So you have three options how to basically deal with the action, with the sequences there which have the same name. So the first option you can skip. So in this case, what will happen is that basically if the sequence is new, it will be imported. If not, the plugin will just skip it and do nothing. If you press the keep both, what it will do is pretty much the same what in file browsers. If you press the keep both as well. So what it will do is, if the name is already exist which the plugin tries to import, it will just try to generate new name and keep both of the sequences. And if you press the override, in this case, if while trying to import the sequence which is already exist, so the plugin will just replace existing sequence with the one which is in the archive. Again, you probably noticed that the sequences is basically the archives. So when you export the sequence, the archive will have basically the setup, what to run, in which order, and it will contain all the icons needed for the sequence, or all sequences. So when you import things, you will just have all the icons there, meaning that if you share your file with someone and the person will import the file, it will the Docker will show all the icons, so everything will will be looking as expected. So in our case, we will press keep both, and you will notice that those guys which we selected, they are imported. And if we go to the manage sequences window, you will see that we had conflicting name, like a testing and trim to layer content. And the plugin actually created like this kind of one number, and basically you get the sequences here as well. If we do the import again and keep both again, and look on the manage sequence, you will see that there will be like a 2, 3. So basically it will be doing this all the time. In other words, if, for instance, if you for some reason will export testing 2 and then import it, the plugin will detect that, okay, there is already name taken. It will try to create a different one, and it will have like testing 2 and in brackets 1. But again, it will just create some unique name for you to later on, maybe you can change the name and have the sequence as you want. So the actuator, now instead of just dragging the mouse all over the place, clicking buttons, you can just create the sequences, automate your routines, and focus more on the art instead of clicking buttons around.